Chapter 5. The first time I went to prom, I went with a punker who wore a dress. You have to have some kind of weirdness to interest me. We weren't dating, just friends. I think I might have loaned him my eyeliner. The last prom I went with my friend Papu, a big Hawaiian kid who was very understanding about the fact that I could be there for only 30 minutes, just long enough for us to have our picture taken. My parents were waiting outside to take me to a gig. Prince thought that was hilarious. That last year I lived in Germany. I was the go-to belly dancer in Wiesbaden, Frankfurt, and Mainz. I had friends at school, mostly my chorus and drama peeps, but I was known as a good girl. I didn't go to games or pep rallies. I didn't even eat lunch at school because I spent half the school day at the State Theater taking ballet classes that were counted as class hours, which allowed me to graduate a year early. All I wanted to do was to dance in Cairo. Only my good friends Stephanie and Allison knew where I'd been over the holidays. I liked keeping a low profile about it. The letters and tapes were deeply personal. I didn't like the idea of being questioned about it. I didn't like the assumptions I knew people would make. The night of the 30-minute prom, I was also double-booked to dance. The first gig was a slight departure from my usual belly dance flamenco fusion. This was a full-on flamenco thing, a showcase for belly dancers supporting other belly dancers, which I agreed to do months earlier. By the time I realized that prom was that night and my professional certification exam was the next morning, advertising had gone out, and Mama was getting nervous about the time frame. I was the hardest working belly dancer in the show, and she was worried that I'd perform some underprepared dance and not look good for the belly dance community. She'd always had more of a Spanish flair, so she took an old costume of hers, altered it to fit me, a gorgeous red dress with a red bolero. I had studied and watched the dance but never got the zapateo part of it, but I tried on the outfit the night before prom and loved it. I asked her to let me have the big Spanish peineta that women always wear with a huge flower and a mantón, the lace Spanish shawl. The more stuff I asked for, the more nervous she got. "When are you planning to rehearse this?" she kept asking. "I've been visualizing it," I said, "when I'm in bed and working on ballet and talking on the phone." She did not find this comforting and was anxiously waiting in the car while I did the prom drive-by. On the way to the show, she and Daddy kept trying to talk to me, and I kept saying, "Please, just be quiet and let me listen to the music. I have to memorize this drum solo." I love a good drum solo, by the way. Nothing is choreographed, but when I know the drums, I have a basic plan. Nothing excites me more than a live drummer. Not knowing what the other person is going to do creates a tense energy between dancer and drummer, and I love that. I didn't know it then, but this was exactly what would happen when I was on stage with Prince, particularly during his famous after-concert shows, when he'd leave a huge stadium performance and head for some small club where we would all jam our butts off for 2 hours or more. One night in London, he slayed an extended version of Peach for over half an hour, while I danced around him like a Turkish dervish on steroids. When it was over, he spiked his guitar like a football, grabbed my hand, strutted backstage, and just fell out flat, spread eagle on the floor. He was in ecstasy. Getting into costume for the showcase, I trusted the drums to take me where I needed to go, but I was worried about a strained muscle in my foot. One of the male Egyptian belly dancers saw me backstage, trying to stretch my feet by stepping on a bottle, and asked me what was wrong. "I've been preparing for a ballet exam," I told him, "doing a lot in point." He said, "I'm Ali. I'm a massage therapist. Let me take a look at it. Maybe I can help." At first I said no because I never liked to be touched like that, especially by a man. Even now, a friend will try to give me a massage. Not happening, but thank you. In this case, I was desperate, so I sat down and he took my foot between his hands. Within minutes, the pain was gone. I don't know what he did, but I've never forgotten the experience. It was such a relief, and as the pain disappeared, a fresh infusion of energy replaced the tension I'd been feeling. I finished preparing, putting my hair up and drawing a bold curl on my face. Mama took one look and was more scared than ever, but I laughed and told her, "Go sit down already, it'll be fine." The moment that music kicked in, I was lost in that energy, and a passion that can't be choreographed took over my body. There was a moment when I caught my mother's eye. just as I did a deep back bend and released that updo she was worried about, letting my long hair flow down as I came up. I smiled because her face was priceless, complete awe at what she was seeing. To this day, she says it's her favorite performance of mine. People loved it and wanted to know who choreographed it. I had to tell them, no one. And I couldn't repeat it if my life depended on it. It was something that came out in that moment and only that moment. If I tried to replicate it, it would never be the same. But there was no time to revel in it. I had to get to my regular gig at a local restaurant. After that, I went home exhausted and ate a huge plate of spaghetti, knowing I'd need the carbs to get through the exam the next day. Along with about 50 other girls in tutus and point shoes, I registered for a master class, which was grueling but doable because my ballet teacher was strict and had prepared me well. I warmed up and waited my turn to perform my classical piece. When I finally walked into the room, I had to laugh. It was exactly like Flashdance, right down to the long table of grim-looking judges and an old-school turntable off to the side. I put a cassette into the tape player instead, but my finger was trembling, just like the girl in the movie when I pushed play. After I danced, I waited outside with the rest of the girls, expecting someone to come out and tell us either leave or prepare for the next round. Instead, someone came out and said a list had been posted. Everyone was either really good or really bad. You either had your certificate or you were out. While everyone was freaking out around me, searching for the list, I sat there thinking about the years of stress fractures and no pizza or brownies or going out nights. I had sacrificed a lot to be a ballerina. Now, for the first time in my life, I was getting scared because a lot of girls who'd sacrificed and slaved for the same goal were seeing that their best wasn't good enough, and it was heartbreaking. As the group thinned, I made my way forward and saw my name on a sheet of paper. Congratulations, it said in German. You have passed. No need to do the rest of the segments, as the judges could see through your classical routine that you have all the technical work to perform any of them. Best of luck. Please allow a few days for your certificate. I drove home on cloud 9 and ate a cookie to celebrate. When my dad pulled up in the driveway, I ran out and jumped in his arms like a 4-year-old. He and Mama were so happy for me. They'd sacrificed for this too. The certification would keep me in Germany as a professional dancer if I wanted to, but I knew I could make better money in Cairo. And when I was done with Cairo, I'd be able to go anywhere in the world and teach. The dancer's diet is sort of symbolic. As a ballerina, I'd be killing my hunger with tomato juice and coffee, carrots in my pockets at all times in order to stay stick thin. As a belly dancer, I'd be making bank and eating baklava, trying to maintain an extra 15 pounds. No brainer. Prince called that night, and I told him the whole saga. This is big, I told him. Now I can go anywhere as a dancer. I can do anything. I'd filmed myself practicing all 3 components of the exam, and unlike the German judges, he wanted to see them all, plus the magical flamenco moment and everything else I was doing. He loved the classical and belly dance best. The music he was sending me was more and more in sync with the rhythm I could dance to, and I started seeing the classical dance moves he was instinctively doing on stage. Entrechacat, a classical ballet term meaning interweaving or braiding, is when a dancer jumps up, exchanging feet quickly, front back. When I noticed him doing that, I said, "Hey, that's ballet. Where did you get that?" Baryshnikov, he shrugged. No big deal. Before graduation, I made a short trip over to the States to visit Jen at the University of Maryland. She was in her element, soaking up college life, hanging out with a nice crowd and working as a DJ and stand-up comic. But I knew this wasn't for me. I didn't even bother taking my SATs. In May 1991, I graduated from high school, 17 going on 30. I was a lot more grown up than many adults I've known in my life. I'd been running my own business in a pretty big way for several years, traveled all over the world and studied my craft with diligence and self-discipline. I had done a lot, seen a lot, and been through some pretty intense life experiences. Legally, however, I was still a minor. Prince seemed to operate on a plane of existence where age didn't matter. He always said he didn't count birthdays because he didn't count days at all. And then he'd add with a sly smile, That's why I look the same as I did 10 years ago. His legal team was not so existential about it. Prince wanted me near, but since I was just 17 and a half, they drew up a power of attorney document making Prince my legal guardian for 6 months. After that, I'd be 18, a legal adult. Meanwhile, the document with my father's signature allowed me to travel by myself to LA and Minnesota, work on film and recording projects, and participate in performances at all hours of the day or night. The agreement was pretty open as to what these projects and performances might be, but Prince got on the phone with Daddy and told him, "She'll be safe. You can trust me." "I know where to find you," said Daddy, and he wasn't completely kidding. But he and Mama had faith in my ability to keep my head on straight. They knew that the opportunity to work with Prince could be a game changer for my career. I was completely oblivious to all this at the time. This document came as a complete surprise to me just a few weeks ago. Blew my mind a little, to be honest. But maybe it does explain in part how protective Prince was in those days. He was careful not to get my hopes up or encourage any expectations on my part. The first time he flew me to LA, he'd mentioned he was doing a music video for Diamonds and Pearls, but I thought I was just going to be there to hang out like we usually did. That was exciting enough for me. As I flew into LAX from Germany, I remembered flying in for That's Incredible, seeing the Hollywood sign for the first time, knowing with that hazy sixth sense, I'll be back. Prince's security people met me at the airport and said, "Hey, Martha." "What? Why are you calling me Martha?" "You're Martha George," they told me. "He wants you on this video, but if they find out you're 17, you can't do it. Your dad said it's okay, but there's a union thing and paperwork, so you're Martha." Okay, I figured, I can rock Martha. The Diamonds and Pearls music video was an elaborate vision that cost a bundle and was being directed by Rebecca Blake, who also directed Kiss and Cream for Prince. She'd also done a few music videos with my old heartthrob, Luis Miguel. When I presented myself to her, she said the polite but dismissive things directors say to you at a cattle call audition you're not nailing. Later, Prince told me what she'd said to him. "I don't think she's sexy enough. I don't think she's got that thing." Hard to hear, but good to know. "I cannot believe she doesn't see what I see," he said. "But okay." He trusted her judgment, and I can't argue with the final results. The music video is a thing of beauty, with gorgeous locations, grand pianos, dancers, musicians, children, bubbles, and a chase scene. It was a huge, huge production. I was pretty crushed not to be a part of it, but I took it like a professional. It was still thrilling to be in LA, visiting Prince at his house and helping him make breakfast the next morning. He asked about my parents, and I said, "They broke up again, sort of." "How do you sort of break up with your wife?" "They're still living together, but they're both seeing other people." "Uh-oh, that don't work." "They love each other, but together, I don't know. It's a strange relationship. I keep saying, would you guys please break up? I think they're waiting until I leave home, but I can't take the fighting. It's just like when I was a little kid, arguments and jealousy and just that lack of respect for each other." He squeezed my hand. My parents were like that too. He slid eggs off the griddle onto our plates, and while we ate, he told me a bit about his own battlefield childhood. He told me that when he was around 7 years old, his mother came home from a shopping trip one day with her shirt inside out, because she'd been trying on clothes and was in a hurry to get home. His father jumped to the conclusion that she'd been out cheating on him and went ballistic. As he was telling me about the violent scene that unfolded, I could see how deeply it still affected him. You see some allusions to it in Purple Rain. You see the house where he grew up witnessing a more vicious and sometimes violent version of what I grew up with. But not everything you see in the movie is literally autobiographical. His father didn't have a gun, and his parents split when he was a little boy. His mother remarried, and Prince went on to live with his father. But that didn't last long. He was basically on his own when he was 12. This was the first of many conversations we had about his father over the years. Before we were married, I asked him, "Will I ever get to meet your dad?" "I don't know," he said. "We had a falling out." "About money?" I guessed, because if there was one thing that caused friction between my dad and me, it was money. But Prince said, "No, it was about music." He kept sending me cassette tapes just pounding on the piano, and maybe after an hour, he finally hits 3 beautiful notes. But I gotta listen to a whole tape of that pounding for these 3 notes? I think he lost it. At the end of the day, we both loved our parents and saw them for the beautifully flawed people they were. The best we could do was try to understand life from their perspective and be grateful for what they gave us. My mom grew up without any affection, I said, so she's not a very affectionate person. But she's smart and witty and incredibly strong, and she has a strong faith. Daddy's the opposite, emotional, an atheist, which I don't get at all. I'm like, how can you think that? Don't tell me you haven't seen any miracles in your life. It's a soul thing. We have these deep discussions, and he goes with me to almost all my gigs. He's my best buddy, but sometimes... would you believe he brought his girlfriend along to a Frankfurt gig when I was 15? We're on our way, and he stops off to pick her up, and I'm like, she's coming? Excuse me? Ah, no, he cringed. That's not right. There's a thing called discretion, man. There's a thing called savoir-faire. I made her sit in the back, and he had to pay for her drinks. Prince really cracked up laughing then, and it felt like a win when I was able to really crack him up. He loved to make other people laugh and embraced a good laugh when it was available to him. And this rental house in LA had a good kitchen for laughing. Just the right amount of reverb off the tile backsplash and big windows. We shared so many mornings like this in various houses we rented in LA. During the years when we were a couple, every once in a while, when it got unbearably cold in Minnesota, too cold for the good people and the bad, he'd prod me awake and say, let's go to LA. California seemed to be full of light and air, and breakfast together felt like the safe haven of love and pancakes neither of us had when we were children. Prince hated that I was bummed out about not getting cast on the Diamonds and Pearls video, so he took me shopping on Melrose Avenue, which back then was a cool street where you could get all the up-and-coming designers. Prior to that day, my only experience of shopping was at the mall, part utilitarian, part social function. Trust me, he said, you don't want to go to the mall with me. Last time I went to a mall, I took half the people with me. Not good. There's screaming and craziness. People get hurt. His idea of shopping was a fast and plenty approach. We drove down Melrose in the limo, and at each place, either a bodyguard would go in first to prepare the store for Prince's arrival, or Prince, who was faster than anybody else, would bolt in and out before the people inside knew what was happening. So I followed suit. No time to check price tags, just scope out the coolest clothes, grab whatever you want, and hand it to a security on your way out. Do you like this dress? He'd ask me, holding up something I wouldn't wear in a million years. My day-to-day clothes were mostly leggings with oversized shirts and maybe a jacket. But wanting to be a team player, I'd say, I don't know, I think so. He'd smile and hand it to the security guy. When I really did like something, I didn't have to say a word. All I had to do was smile and he'd hand it over. We laughed at the crazy stuff, bondage bras and leather, but it was a little early for that sort of thing. There would come a time later on when I would lead these expeditions on my own, and Prince would usually end up wearing the clothes I bought for myself. When I was in the band, Melrose was my go-to place for short skirts, tiny tops, cool boots, and punky sweaters. It was the King's Road of Los Angeles. I became the shopper because when he wasn't wearing custom clothes, he wanted to wear a jacket or stylized pants, and the best styles and sizes for him were usually found in the women's department. I got used to buying suits knowing that he was going to take them for himself and put in shoulder pads or dude them up in some way. He's the only man in the world who was really able to make that work, and work well. He walked through one shop after another, scooping things off racks, dresses, skirts, sweaters, jackets, and sneakers so I could play basketball with him, and people followed behind him paying for everything. It reminded me of that shopping scene in Pretty Woman, I told Jan. As the limo pulled away from the hotel, taking me back to the airport, I looked over my shoulder crying. Another Pretty Woman moment. I felt like that every time I left him, like I was leaving my other half. It was so comfortable to be around him. He could be incredibly funny and had a capacity for such tenderness. He could also be mean, I soon discovered, but so could I. So even that was weirdly okay with me. It made him human, and he seemed to like and respect me more when I checked him on it. He had more than enough women putting him on a pedestal. He needed someone who wasn't afraid to tell him the truth and work hard and play hard. I couldn't beat him at basketball, but I could lift him up, and my legs were so strong I could get a wrestling lock on him and make him say, "Uncle." I started making frequent trips to Paisley Park. We recorded The Max, Blue Light, and When God Created Woman, all in one marathon session. I hung out on the sound stage watching the Diamonds and Pearls tour show coming together. I sat dancer style on a long black sofa in the studio watching and listening to him work, doing my best not to nod off. When I was in Germany, he called almost every day, and I continued sending him videos. Lisa Bonet was directing a video for him, and after she also declined to cast me, he wrote, "Mayte, what a kickin' tape. Ballet is cool, but when you dance like that, hypnosis. Thank you. I keep all your tapes in a little secret section in my house. Only I know where they are. Believe it or not, Lisa thought you were too pretty for the part in the video. The girl she picked is tall and strange looking with short hair. Such is life. But I'm sure we'll work together on something. I miss you too, and hope to see you soon." That summer, I saw the movie City Slickers and fell in love with Billy Crystal's rescued calf, Norman. I announced to my dad and everyone else I'm not eating beef ever again. I'm going to be a vegetarian. "What if I make beef?" said Daddy. "Make it. I'm not eating it." I felt myself taking ownership of my life, in big and small ways. When it came time for my regular visit to Madame Abla, I told Prince, "I think I'll stay in Cairo for 3 months or so. I need to gain some weight and improve my Arabic and get my next contract hooked up." "Wait a second," he said. "You're going to Egypt? Can I send a film crew with you?" Without asking questions, I said, "Sure." I didn't know it at the time, but he was already envisioning a compilation of music videos that would become 3 Chains of Gold, his operatic answer to Bohemian Rhapsody. And all he really knew about himself was that it had something to do with me and what I was doing as a dancer, and the story all this was beginning to tell inside his head. All this time he'd been sampling from the tapes I sent, beginning with me as a little girl with a sword on my head on That's Incredible. He didn't know exactly what would happen if he sent Randy St. Nicholas and a well-equipped crew of a dozen or so people with me, but he knew it would be something beautiful. "Just do what you do," he told us, and that turned out to be the most brilliant direction he could have given. Randy went everywhere with me, asking a million questions about the people and the pyramids and the art of belly dancing. We hired someone from the hotel to take us out of the city, but the guy turned out to be a bit shady and made off with the passports of everyone on the crew. As they followed me around Egypt, my Egypt, not the one you get from the double-decker tour bus, Randy picked up on how this place had always fed my soul, even before I understood what that meant. She put me in a little black jumper Prince had bought for me that day on Melrose, added a sheer white veil, and had me dance on the pyramids when no one was around. That footage ended up in Damn You. She asked an old man to come over and talk to me, and before she started shooting, she said, "Pretend he's telling you something that breaks your heart." The moment I heard his voice, tears started coursing down my cheeks. We just kept creating these moments and images and sending them to Prince, who was completely open to whatever we said. He'd already sent me early versions of 7, but for the most part, we didn't know what our work was inspiring on his end. We had as much faith in him as he had in us. We'd been hearing disturbing rumors about someone breaking into the hotel rooms of American women, robbing and raping them. One night I was getting ready for bed and a man walked into my room. I was seriously shaken up about this later, but in the moment, I felt only a rush of adrenaline. Oh, hell no! And I whipped out my sword. The astonished guy took off running and I went after him. Someone from the crew opened her door when she heard the noise. "I just remember you chasing him down the hall," she said to me recently, and she sounded kind of astonished by it herself. If you listen closely to 7, you hear the swooping sound of a sword cutting the air, and you see me in the video, brandishing my sword with both hands on the hilt. I love that stance, in contrast to the way I am when the sword is balanced on my head, turned by just the tip of my finger. It's a fitting symbol of a woman's great power, I think. There's the posture, the balancing act, but there's also a sharp blade of badass when needed. In November 1992, I turned 18. I was officially my own woman, and it felt good. Prince was working hard to prepare the Diamonds and Pearls show, trying not to be distracted by the Arabic vibe and the Egyptian imagery that seemed to be speaking to him. My heart's already there, he told me, but my head has to do this thing right now. Ideas for Seven and the sacrifice of Victor were taking shape, but would have to wait for his full attention. This was the way he always worked. That's how he was able to shrug it off when something didn't sell as well as he'd hoped, or the critics trashed him. By the time that particular thing was released to the public, he was already on to the next thing creatively. He wanted me to be on call, essentially, so I'd be close by when he did have an opportunity to work on the new stuff. And to be totally honest, he wanted me to be available to hang out more often, so he asked me to come to Paisley Park and stay for a while. I didn't expect to stay at his house. It was semi-cool for a female friend to visit now and then, but not to camp there on an ongoing basis. At first, I stayed at the Sofitel. Then they moved me to a nice little prairie house at the Country Suites. But I couldn't even make a cup of tea there, so they got me an apartment and rented furniture. I asked his assistant, "How long is he expecting me to stay?" "I don't know," said the assistant, and handed me the key. It was an odd arrangement, and I knew how it probably looked from the outside. "What are you doing there?" Jen asked, and I didn't have a solid answer. I was determined, personally and professionally, not to miss a call from Prince. But he always seemed to hit me up when I was either in the shower or taking out the trash. I'd come back to see that I'd missed a call from a Paisley Park number and I'd scream. I felt like a prisoner waiting for those phone calls, and I hated that. So I bought a long phone cord I could stretch all the way out the door while I dodged down the hall with the garbage. That wasn't enough. So I dipped into my dancing money and bought a cell phone, which was not a small expense back then. The bill was insane, but essential to my sanity. Some days when I felt like I was about to lose my mind, I'd go to Minneapolis and take a ballet class or go to the mall and smell perfumes. I pride myself on my nose, by the way. I have a knack for matching the perfect scent to the right person. And not long after this, I was buying all of Prince's perfume. Dune, Samsara, Carolina Herrera, and Yves Saint Laurent, and cosmetics, all MAC until he started stealing my Dior mascara. He loved the essential oils I brought from Egypt. These days, my favorite are rose oil and vanilla. He would have happily stolen that. When he called, no matter what I was doing, I acted like I was doing nothing. But he always knew. "Where are you?" "Ballet." "Cool. I just wanted to make sure you're okay." In January, he sent me to New York to do a photo shoot and press training. "Why me?" I asked. "You're the princess," he said. "I want you to be that princess." And he wasn't saying it in a method acting, if you see it, you can be it kind of way. He wanted me to tell people that I was a princess from Cairo because he was certain that in a previous life I had been one. And at this moment, that version of me was more real to him than any other. "But what if they ask?" "Just smile," he said. "They won't be able to breathe." Something had been shifting in our relationship since I became my newly emancipated self. I was an interesting adult instead of a charming kid. Our odd little friendship deepened with every long conversation. The connection was becoming more personal. A different kind of flirtation began to go both ways. I was his muse of the moment, and he was becoming more obvious about the things he was trying to communicate to me through his music. He realized that she was new to love, naive in every way, he wrote in the morning papers. That's why he had to wait. Speaking for myself, I was in love, but I was no fool. I was driving a rental car and living with rented furniture. After a few months, I asked him, "Am I ever going home?" "Going home?" he said, genuinely surprised. "But you're in the band." "I need to go back," I said uncomfortably. "I can come back if you want, but I feel weird not working and being able to buy stuff I need." Being part of the new power generation was an exciting concept, but apparently it hadn't crossed his mind that while these things I was doing for him were fun, creative things I loved doing, other people actually paid me to dance for them. At Paisley Park, I wasn't getting paid. I didn't know what I was. "I hear you talk about girls wanting money from you and agents calling and getting rates," I said. "I'm not that person. I need to know that you know that. I was never that person with my parents. Why would I start being that person now?" If that's what it's about, then I'd rather go back to Germany. I have my work visa, and I can get another contract in Cairo. But you're going on tour. Am I? Yes, he said. We just haven't gotten to that part of the show yet. Why do you think you're here? I honestly have no idea. The next day, someone came from administration with paperwork to put me on payroll. My heart sank. I was to receive a salary of $300 a week. I could make more money belly dancing for one night than I could get paid for a month at Paisley Park. Okay, suck it up, I told myself. My rent was being paid and I still had a healthy stash of money in my American checking account. I was determined to prove my worth, stick out the tour, and do my best until I couldn't any longer. And after that, Egypt would still be there. I knew it wasn't the most financially prudent decision I've ever made, but by this time there was no use denying my strong feelings for this man. I didn't really expect that to go anywhere. I just wanted to hang out with him as long as it felt right. But just to reality check myself, I called Daddy and asked him what he thought. This is the first time he'd seen me not know how to deal with the situation, so he flew over to see me a few weeks later. As I came out to greet him, he took my picture, and I rushed over to scold him. Taking pictures at Prince's home and studio was simply not done. I had a Polaroid when I was pregnant because I wanted to take pictures of my blossoming belly, but for years there was almost a phobia of cameras in Paisley Park. Truthfully, there was something liberating about knowing there were no cameras around. There was also something very sad and lonely about it. Given the choice, I'd have to say I prefer the selfie-obsessed culture of connection that lets me see the people I love and share photos of the camera-loving puppies I rescue. I'm that mommy who Instagrams every finger painting and will archive every first day of school from kindergarten through college on Facebook memories. Your dad got a little crazy when he talked to my manager, Prince told me later. Oh no. I think he must have read a book about the music business on the flight over. Oh dear. He told me the over-the-top demands my father had tried to float. Daddy even had the nerve to ask for a point on the records, which was like asking for 20% of Prince's cut. I almost fainted, but Prince laughed and said, "Don't worry, parents can be like that. I get it. He sees me writing songs about you and he wants to make sure you're not being taken advantage of." I didn't get a raise, but I was grateful that my dad got to see where I worked and hadn't done anything to screw it up. I called Mama and said, "I need you to send me my things. I'm going to stay for a while." The New Power Generation, also known as MPG, was a movable feast of incredibly talented people who functioned as Prince's backup band and the core of his filmmaking talent pool from 1990 until 2013. There was never really a job opening in MPG. If Prince saw something that intrigued him, he found a way to bring it into the MPG experience. If he sensed someone would be better off somewhere else, he would cut them loose, even if the person was himself. When I became part of the group in 1994, MPG was a fairly new development, but they'd found a groove that worked for them. Now here I came, a solo performer who'd always done whatever I wanted to do, and no one quite knew where I was meant to fit in. We didn't pal around a lot while we were rehearsing for the Diamonds and Pearls tour, but we bonded on stage and became a unit that Prince accurately referred to as family. The drummer, Michael Bland, was a musical genius with perfect pitch, as was Sonny T. Prince would test Michael on it, and I never heard him miss. Sometimes I'd get on the bus and grunt some discordant noise, trying to stump him, and without fail, he'd tilt his head to the side and nail it. I'd call that a C-sharp or an elephant fart, one or the other. Tommy Barbarella, named after the Jane Fonda movie, played keyboards. Also hair. His hair was long and wavy and key to his showmanship. I'm amazed he didn't rupture a disc in his neck, flipping and swooshing it. Tommy is also a musical genius. There was a lot of that going around at Paisley Park. During my time with MPG, he was usually shredding the keytar, which is kind of like the love child of a keyboard and a guitar, also known as the purple axe, which was actually invented and patented by Prince. Fun fact. Rosie Gaines was still playing keyboards and contributing vocals that moved ceilings and walls. Sonny T played bass, Levi Caesar played guitar, and there was a horn section. I hate to make it sound like a movie star and the rest, But so many people came and went over the years, I can't begin to list them all here. Even if I did remember all their names, I will say that every one of them was unique and brilliant. There was never a member of MPG who failed to blow my mind in some way. In Prince's mind, there was never a hard line between the visual and the musical. It was all one. We all came together, dancer, drummer, keyboard, lights, to transport the audience into an experience that was already a reality inside Prince's head. I think that's part of the chemistry that made him a megastar. He brought all this game along with his musical genius at the perfect moment in music history, the moment when video killed the radio star. All of which to say, Prince saw his dancers as part of the band. He always talked about the impression James Brown's backup dancers made on him that time his stepfather lifted him up onto the stage. On my way out, he said, I saw some of the finest dancing girls I've ever seen in my life. I respected that. He influenced me by his control over his group, his dancing girls, his apples, and his oranges. I think a lot of people heard that in some sexual way, like the dancers were his harem or something, but Prince's dancers were more likely to be men. Way before I entered the scene, during the shooting of Purple Rain, Prince walked into the bathroom and found Tony, Damon, and Kirk breakdancing on the tile floor. He was so impressed, he highlighted them in the movie. Look for them up in the balcony during The Bird, and the dancing beast TDK, aka the Game Boys, was born. For the next 10 years, they toured with Prince, did music videos, and contributed a lot to the general fun and mayhem that went on. Lori L. and Rabia Lamorte, aka Diamond and Pearl, were Prince's mascots at that moment. They were on the Diamonds and Pearls album cover and featured heavily in the touring show. It didn't take long for me to wise up to the fact that Lori and Prince were romantically involved. We did the music video for the Max, with me belly dancing with my sword on top of the piano, and then we produced a commercial, introducing Mayte, and we continued rehearsing for the tour. This was such a blast for me. I loved being part of that energy that had taken my breath away when I saw that very first show in Barcelona, but there was a bit of an adjustment period. I always wore bright red lipstick because, little dancer secret, it provided a focal point that helped me spot myself in the mirror, and I always showed up stylish and put together because that's just me. But on one off day, I arrived wearing sweatpants, and Prince made me go home and change. I was annoyed and humiliated, but he knew how to get me laughing again when I came back in spandex. I did understand where he was coming from. He never left the house unless he was done up pretty. Marilyn Monroe never left the house without full makeup, he told me, as if no other explanation was needed. Sneakers were for basketball, period. He always showed up for rehearsal in high heels, makeup, good hair, the works. There were no jeans, ever, around Paisley Park in my era. He wore a jean jacket on Sign of the Times, and I tried to give him a hard time about it, but he said, "That's custom. That's different." Bottom line, you never ever saw him looking wrong. Knowing this, I felt a cold shiver down my spine when I read in the Minneapolis Star-Tribune that when his body was found in the elevator at Paisley Park, Prince was wearing a black shirt and pants. Both were on backward, and his socks were inside out. This made no sense to me. The sheer irony of it broke my heart all over again.